Hi, everyone. I'm Maggie McGrath, editor of Forbes Women. In hundreds of Facebook groups around the world, women with unwanted pregnancies are looking for solutions. Many, according to new reporting from my colleague Emily Baker White, are getting scammed. Joining us now to talk about her investigation is senior writer on our tech team, Emily Baker White. Emily, thank you so much for coming on to talk about this important story.
I'm so happy to be here.
So let's break it down. You really did a deep dive into Meta and Facebook and women with unwanted pregnancies who are looking for help. You found nearly 800 pages or groups across 76 countries, pages and groups that allege or purport to offer help for women, but it's not always help. What did you find?
Yeah, so first of all, this is a universal human experience on every continent around the globe. There are people who are turning to Facebook, mostly in groups, but also on pages, to try to get help for pregnancies that they didn't intend and do not want. And a lot of these groups start out as support groups. They are women turning to other women. What do I do? How can you help? And then what we see is capitalism. We see people coming in and offering to sell these women things to help them. Some of those things are natural remedies that probably will have no effect on their pregnancies. Some of those things are natural remedies that may hurt the people who need them, that are actually dangerous. And a lot of them are probably legitimate, safe medication that will end their pregnancies. But it's really hard to tell what's what when you're dealing with an unregulated, murky marketplace where people aren't using their real names and they say, DM me and I'll sell you a pill, right? And so what we see is where people can't be having these conversations openly with doctors, they are having them in these sort of semi-public, semi-private forums where they don't know who they're talking to and they don't know where they're getting.
I see. So a lot of these pages or groups are actually started by real people who intend to help or at least provide information or support. And then it's the scammers who come in, or are scammers starting any of these pages?
Both is definitely true, and it's hard to know who's a scammer and who's a seller of legitimate medicine, but there are certainly a lot of pages and groups that are run by people who are offering something for sale. What that thing is, often hard to know. You get a lot of people in these groups reporting, don't buy from so-and-so, you'll never see a pill. Don't buy from so-and-so, they scammed me. There are some really horrific stories of people saying, I saved up money to be able to buy these pills and I sent the money to someone and they scammed me. And now I'm 6 weeks later along in my pregnancy than I was before and I still don't have the money together. And so you actually see stories of people who say that they're now trying to terminate pregnancies that are later term than they would be had they not encountered scammers. Now, one thing is this is probably happening on other platforms. This is probably happening everywhere that people have an internet connection. But I talked to an expert from the Center for Reproductive Rights who made a really important point, which is that there are places online where people can get accurate information about abortion, where they can order abortion pills all around the globe. I Need an A is one in the United States. Women on Web is one that has a big international presence. These folks are turning to each other on Facebook because that's a place they can go. But it's not the best place they can go on the internet.
I was about to ask you what the other sites and options were. What are the other? You mentioned, I think there were four in your story. So I Need an A was one, Women on the Web is another. Is it just that the awareness of these sites and apps are just not wide enough and therefore people are going to Facebook because that's where they're spending a lot of their time anyway?
Yeah, I think, Facebook is really big and it's really good for a lot of things. And so there are people who are on Facebook anyway, who are talking about the things that are happening in their lives. And then there are people who are making money by offering goods and services to these women. And those people are going to be far more aggressive than nonprofits that provide information and access to pills. And so what you're seeing is the market incentives of the people who are trying to sell overcoming the sort of public interest in getting accurate information options to people who need them.
You had a few screenshots of some of those aggressive sellers, and it was literally like the same photo, but one in Dubai and one in Dubai as a city, but one in the country of Qatar. It was all over the world, but same photo, but same anonymity aspect. Can you talk about how the anonymous user feature is playing into this landscape and complicating things for women who are seeking help?
Yeah, so Facebook launched a feature earlier this year called the anonymous user feature in groups, where you can post in a group without having to disclose your real name, which of course, in theory, people on Facebook have to use their real name. They don't always. But even if you have a Facebook in your real name, like I do, and you want to post in a group and you don't want your real name to be associated with that post, Facebook now allows you to do that. And you can see why. If you were in a group about a sensitive health condition and you wanted to talk to other people about that condition and get their advice on it or what have you, you might not want to put your name on that post. But allowing anonymity, of course, also helps people who want to deceive people. And in the case that you described, those weren't even using the anonymous person feature, but they were just a gajillion pages using the same language, using the same photo, trying to reach people all over the globe and sort of making a scaled attempt to do that. Now, do those people actually sell mifepristone and misoprostol? Maybe. Totally possible that they do. But they, regardless, appear to be running what is effectively an aggressive marketing campaign to try to get people to buy drugs from them. And maybe you actually get drugs if you send them money, and maybe you don't. And one of the really frustrating things about this murky Facebook ecosystem is that people don't have a good way of knowing that before they start engaging with these sellers.
And then it's also tricky. Your reporting indicated that some of these pages are hard to track because they use other words for what they're looking for, like candy and caramello or caramello. What else did you find in this kind of underbelly, so to speak?
Yeah, so those people are using what we in the tech reporting space call algo speak. And you'll see this across platforms where platforms try to prevent people from talking about certain topics or censor certain topics. It is only a matter of time before the people who want to discuss those topics will find another way to describe them. And so the sale of prescription drugs is not allowed on Facebook unless you are placing ads through a very regulated system that Facebook has for pharmaceutical companies. So people aren't allowed to be selling abortion drugs on Facebook in this unregulated manner. But they're going to do it anyway, right? Because Facebook is big and people are going to use other words to get at what they're talking about. Another thing is that the sale almost never happens on Facebook itself. You get someone says, here's my WhatsApp number, contact me here. And all of a sudden, the information is now encrypted and much harder to crack down on if you're Facebook. And so you see people using euphemisms because they don't want to get caught by Facebook.
Now, you've reached out to a few of those sellers on WhatsApp. What was the reaction when you identified yourself as a journalist seeking information?
I reached out to a lot of sellers on WhatsApp and it went nowhere. So a number of the accounts that I reached out to had an auto response that came back and asked, how far along are you? What are you looking for? What are your needs? That auto response obviously hadn't read the initial message that I sent, which said, hi, I'm a reporter. I would like to interview people who are, operating this service. But when I did actually get people on the other side of the text exchange, which only happened maybe 4 times, those people wanted nothing to do with me.
Interesting. Perhaps not surprising, but
Totally not surprising. In a lot of these jurisdictions, what they're doing could lead to legal penalties. And so if they're operating something that could get them in legal trouble, they don't want to talk to anybody about it, least of all someone who's going to put it in a magazine.
There is an interesting sub-issue here, which is the herbal remedies, because there are people who genuinely believe in non-Western medicine options when they are sick or in need of help. So were you able to ascertain how much of the herbal selling were people who genuinely thought that an herbal remedy would rid an unwanted pregnancy versus scamming? It's probably hard to discern intent. I'm just curious about it.
I think it's really hard to discern intent. What's important to be said here is that if you need to terminate a pregnancy, there is not evidence that herbal or home remedies work. You want to speak to a doctor, and you want to make sure that you're getting information from a medical professional about that.
What did Meta have to say about your reporting? Did they comment at all?
Yeah, they did. They're looking at all the groups and pages now to see what violates their policies and what doesn't. There's not a clear. I've written stories and gone to Meta for comment before where I send them a list of 500 pages and it's sort of obvious that all of them are going to violate their policies. That's not the case here. There are a lot of groups that are being run by people who want to exchange information. And then there are people in those groups who say, DM me, and it's not actually totally clear from their language why they're saying DM me, but it's sort of clear from the context that they are engaged in the sale of prescription drugs, which is what would violate Meta's policies here. And so Meta's going to go through it. Probably some of the pages and groups are going to violate and others aren't. To me, I think this is like at its root, not a content moderation question. Like, yeah, Meta has rules and they're going to enforce their rules. But I think this is a larger symptom of what happens when a combination of cultural taboos and legal restrictions prevent people from getting medical information that they need. If people don't have a clear place they can go to get the medical information or the medical care that they need, they are going to turn to one another. And that is a murkier, less safe landscape than the one where we can talk openly about medicine.
I was going to say, I think you calculated at least 1.8 million women had joined these groups or these pages, what does this scale say to you about the state of reproductive health access, not just in the United States, but around the world?
Yeah, both just the number of Facebook users in these groups and also the number of countries where these groups and pages are operating. It doesn't matter where in the world it is. It doesn't matter what kind of country it is, regardless of what the laws in those countries say. These groups and pages are everywhere because there are people everywhere who need this kind of care. And so I think the scale is a reminder that this is an inevitable human problem that is going to happen. I mean, the research is really clear that cracking down on abortion, criminalizing abortion, doesn't reduce the number of abortions. It just reduces the number of safe abortions. And I think this is a cautionary tale about what happens when we can't have open conversations about medicine. We are going to have less open conversations. We are going to have messier conversations and less safe conversations.
There's another element to this reporting that you have put out today, which is the privacy concerns. And prior Forbes reporting, well, I'll actually ask the question to you. What are the privacy concerns here, and what did our prior Forbes reporting indicate about folks who might be seeking help for an unwanted pregnancy on Facebook and what Facebook could be doing with that data?
Yeah, so there was a case in 2022 where there was a mother and a daughter who needed abortion medicine, and they tried to buy abortion medicine through DMs on Facebook. And their DMs, law enforcement in Nebraska subpoenaed Facebook, gave Facebook a warrant and said, you have to turn over these DMs. And they did turn over the DMs, and they were later part of a prosecution of the mother and the daughter. In places where abortion is not legal, anytime you are seeking information and you write something down on a platform, that platform can be forced to turn over that data to law enforcement. And this is just a way that the internet has changed how our lives work now. This isn't a Facebook specific thing, right? Facebook didn't have a choice in the Nebraska case. They couldn't have done anything differently. Law enforcement said, you got to turn it over, you got to turn it over. And so that would be the same on Twitter, on Reddit, on any platform. And anytime you are seeking care and you are writing stuff down into a computer, that stuff might be turned over someday. And so if you are seeking information in a place where this, where the legality of abortion is restricted, be careful about your communications. Be careful who you are talking to and how you are talking to them. Because on abortion or any other issue, when you are posting, even if you're posting with that anonymous feature, Facebook still knows who you are, presumably, and they can still turn over that information. And so really just think about what you want to put in writing on the internet, because it might end up in somebody else's hands someday.
That's been true for so long, but it's ever more important given the limitations on reproductive health access. Emily, you released this reporting earlier today. What has been the reaction from readers, from folks who have seen the story? Have you heard anything or anything notable?
Yeah, I mean, most of the people I've heard from felt the same way that I did about this, which is that it's sad. This is a story to be angry about, and it's a story to be scared about, because it shows real tragic human difficulty. A lot of the people in these groups, they talk about wanting to be free. And a lot of them are worried about what's going to happen to their existing families, their existing children. Some of them, may be in difficult marriages or partnerships where they don't feel safe. And the Facebookness of it all, Facebook is just a conduit for a conversation that's happening around the globe, around the internet, because this is a universal human experience. And it's a thing that is everywhere. It's going to keep being everywhere. And the more that we can talk about it and deal with it like the health issue it is, the better off we're going to be.
Emily Baker-White, thank you so much for your reporting, and thank you for sitting down with us today. We so appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me.